Continuing now with Joe Garagiola's Baseball is a Funny Game, which he claimed was the funniest book I have ever written. And who's to question him? When we ended last session, we were in the middle of Chapter 9, the Social Security numbers. So we continue now with that chapter. Concluding his observations on scouts, Frank Lane says, I'd rather have 2 good scouts than 2 minor league farm clubs. Good scouts can dig up talent. Ball clubs are not hard to find. Scouting is not simply finding raw talent. Evaluating raw talent is the hardest of the scouting jobs. The trend now is to wait and become a bidder in the auction for the boy. Though a scout may be looking at raw talent for the first time, he may already know that the beginning price is $50,000 or $75,000. Tryout camps are still the best single bet for future major league talent. It is the best way to get the prospects with the least amount of cash outlay. The player attending the tryout camp is looking for the opportunity. Go to him and you are paying a cover charge. Although it is often more discouraging than looking for that needle in a haystack, the tryout camps have produced the likes of Harvey Haddocks and Red Schoendienst. Attendance at a tryout camp immediately stamps the boy with having the important ingredient, desire. You need not be reassured that he came to play. What else did he come for if he didn't come to play? There are other advantages to the tryout camp. The prospect is in your backyard, and he shouldn't get away. It brings qualified judges to the rural areas and the crowded tenement districts. To judge his speed, a batter is asked to run as hard and as fast as possible to second on the last swing at bat. But how would you judge a player who, after his last swing, tore right across the pitcher's mound to get to second? A prospect did that and then told Walter Shannon, "That was the fastest way I know to second." Tryout camps are open to all within a given age limit. Shannon tells the story of the big, tall boy who came to tryout camp. He was playing first base in a high hat and a swallowtail coat. "I'm not just satisfied to be a major league player," he explained. "I want to be a baseball clown like Al Schacht." Joe LeBate, the Philly scout, once asked a boy who claimed to be a pitcher about the apparent nothingness of his pitches. "How long have you been pitching, son?" "All day, sir," the boy said. Classifying youngsters is sometimes a big problem. Cardinal scout Buddy Lewis said to a boy, "I know you're a pretty good ball player, but what's your best position?" "Well, sort of stooped over like this." Players are asked to report to the tryout camp with gloves and shoes and uniform if possible. Sometimes a boy adds his own equipment. Tony Kaufman tells about the Madison Avenue boy who came with uniform, glove, shoes, and a briefcase. In it was a 2-tone bat that came apart to fit in the briefcase. "Sure, we let him hit with it," Kaufman says, "but he was more screwed up than that bat, and we couldn't sign him." Determination is hard to discover in a youngster. The Cardinal scout Joe Monahan tells about a youngster who was told he just didn't have it and that he need not come back the next day. But the next day he was back, and once again he was told he couldn't make it. The next day he was back, and again Monahan cornered him. "Son, you were cut twice. Why are you back?" "That wasn't me," the kid says. "Those were my brothers you cropped." "You're the 3rd brother we're cutting," Monahan told him. Frank Lane's favorite is about another youngster who showed up 3 days in a row and was cut every day. The 4th day he came in under an assumed name and a painted mustache. Though it is assumed that every boy at a tryout camp is an aspiring big leaguer, that need not be the case. "I remember a real good-looking third baseman that really caught our eye," Walter Shannon recalls. "He could do everything. The 3rd and last day we pulled him aside to talk contract to him, but he explained he was a Catholic priest who had taken a bunch of kids over and while there thought he would just fool around to see if he could still play." Charlie Grimm got a laugh while conducting a camp during the war. "I am 4F," said the kid, "and I can hit like Ted Williams, throw harder than Dizzy Dean, and play the outfield better than Joe DiMaggio, and if you need me, I can coach too." "You're nuts," said Grimm. "Sure, that's why I'm 4F. Casey Stengel was once stopped cold at a tryout camp. In one of the sessions, Casey called for the kid wearing the shin guards to get behind the plate to see what he could do. "But I'm no catcher," the youngster answered. "I'm an infielder." "An infielder? "What are you doing with the shin guards on?" Casey asked. "Well, I'm a little weak on ground balls." Scouting a minor league is a big part of scouting. A scout will trail a ball club to watch a man under game conditions. A deal will many times hinge on his report. He can't tip his hand or the price goes up. Habits are noted. Results under certain conditions are noted. Everything is added up. Everybody knows he is in the park, and his biggest job is not to tip his hand. Minor league managers, in a sense, are all scouts, as they are required to make reports on the opposition to the parent club. Since scouting is just one of many jobs, they make short and sweet reports. Typical is this classic: good stuff, good control, screwy. Eliminate head, cinch 20-game winner. Bertie Tebbetts, while managing Indianapolis, gave Gabe Paul such short, accurate scouting reports that he later got the manager's job at Cincinnati under Paul. In giving his report on a pitcher, "This boy is wild low, doesn't have enough stuff to be wild high." Once when Burley Grimes was managing in the major leagues, he sent a young pitcher back to the minors. A few days later, the manager of the minor league team wired Grimes, "Your pitcher too green." Grimes back. "Paint him red and send him to Elmira." The most famous of the short scouting reports, which has become a byword, is attributed to Spanish-speaking Mike Gonzalez. Asked for a report on a ball player, Gonzalez wired back, "Good field, no hit." The general manager or the president of the club has to okay the big bonus. The free prospect is no risk. It's the big money that makes the general manager the watchdog. The standings of the parent club are his box score as far as the fans are concerned. The black ink on the ledgers is the tote board as far as the owners are concerned. When the club is winning, it's because the manager and players are doing a great job. Praises do not come his way. When the club is losing, the cry goes up for better players. The telephone is his bat, and he can take more than 3 swings. The men in his organization are his lifeline. His toughest job is to get a good organization around him. He is a broker in human beings. The highest recognition a general manager can get is to be called a good baseball man. What makes a good baseball man? Mr. Branch Rickey says it takes 3 things. 1, to be able to estimate a player's ability accurately on a given amount of look. 2, the ability to digest and evaluate scouts' reports and make decisions from them. 3, to be a good team balancer. Mr. Rickey singles out the late Ed Barrow as an example of a good baseball man. Many men, continues Mr. Rickey, can scout an individual player. Others can scout a whole team as a unit. Barrow could do both. Not many men can. Every year, a ball player must sign a contract after negotiations with the general manager. And a quick personal explanation that's the way they did it back in those days. It was year to year. Contracts were year to year. They didn't do long-term contracts back then. And of course, one reason is they had the reserve clause that bound a player to that team unless the team sold him, traded him, or cut him. So they didn't have free agency, couldn't go shop their skills around, and so contracts were year to year. Teams didn't need to bind themselves in a contract with a player. Continuing. Baseball is one business where you get paid this year because of what you did last year. Contracts are usually sent out by registered mail and must, by baseball rule, be in the mail, in most cases, by February 1st. Techniques of general managers and presidents differ. My business dealings with the Cardinals were with a sympathetic Sam Breeden and with a cold but fair Fred Saig. At Pittsburgh, signing a contract with Mr. Branch Rickey was like being in on the signing of the Declaration of Independence while taking a course in human behavior. Whit Matthews was my general manager at Chicago, and contract negotiation was a sparring match without gloves. Why do you think you deserve more money is the question they all ask in different ways. Once, after 3 days, I gave Mr. Rickey this answer. Because my name is Joe Garagiola, and I did the best I could the days I played and was ready to play the days I wasn't in the game. I have a wife and a family, and we could use the money. He grabbed his bushy eyebrows and looked to the ceiling, then pounded his fist on the table and roared, "Would you put that in writing?" I did, and to this day that argument is still on file. Mr. Rickey could shoot holes in any argument that involved figures, runs driven in, and so many games saved. Figures meant nothing to him. He evaluated players in his own way. A contract session with him was a chance for a debate. His creed in these sessions was set forth in a framed saying he had on the wall over his desk. The inscription read, "He that will not reason is a bigot. He that cannot reason is a fool, and he that dares not reason is a slave." Ball players would compare notes as to how the sessions with Mr. Rickey went. And I see this coming up, another personal observation here. I see this story coming up. This is one of my favorite stories in the book, one that I've always remembered. Ball players would compare notes as to how the sessions with Mr. Rickey went. Gene Hermansky and Chuck Connors, now a TV star, he was in, when I was a kid in the late 1950s, he starred in a show called The Rifleman, one of many westerns, but one of the most prominent westerns on TV back then. Gene Hermansky and Chuck Connors, now a TV star, tried to double-team him one year over at Brooklyn. On the flip of the coin, Hermansky went first. After an hour or so, he came out, and Connors asked how it went. "I didn't sign. Everything was going along pretty good, I thought. I know he's a pretty religious man, so I was ready. He asked me if I smoked, and I said not too much. That was okay. He asked me if I went out with women. I said not too much. That was okay. Then he asked me if I drank, and I said a little now and then, and that's when he hit the ceiling." Connors went in. The same questions came. "Do you smoke?" "No, Mr. Rickey." "Do you go out with women?" "No, Mr. Rickey." "Do you drink?" Connors slammed his fist on the desk and shouted, "If I have to drink to stay in your organization, I'm leaving." Connors signed at good terms. It was easy to figure out Mr. Rickey's thinking about contracts, he says. He had both players and money and just didn't like to see the two of them mix. Preacher Rowe, the great Dodger star, is an admirer of Mr. Rickey's abilities at a contract session. It was during a holdout. After one of the powwows, Mr. Rickey suggested that Preach go home and consider his final offer. "By the way," Mr. Rickey said, "I've got 2 hunting dogs I'd like you to have. I know you like to hunt." Preach took them, and they were the best dogs he ever had. One day while I was having a real good hunt, I got to thinking, he can't be too bad a guy giving me these dogs. So when I got back, I signed the contract. The day I put it in the mail, those 2 dogs took off across the field, and I haven't seen them since. The great National League star Pete Reiser told about the Dodger rookie who, after a good year, went in to talk contract with Mr. Rickey. They couldn't get together at all. Finally, Mr. Rickey said, "Boy, you want too much. I can't give that much. You just can't hit a happy medium." "Oh, yeah," the rookie came back. "Tell me who throws that. I bet I hit him good." The easiest contract I ever signed was in 1951. I thought it would be the toughest because in 1950 I suffered an injury in June, and it kept me out the rest of the year. I expected a cut in pay and hoped to make it as small a slice as possible. The president of the Cardinals, Fred Say, called and said he wanted to see me. "Joe, it was unfortunate what happened last year. I would like to give you more money, but I can't. I'm offering you the same contract. Get off to a good start, and I'll call you in the first chance you give me to do so." Bill Veeck, as a general manager, once devised a system to break contract stalemates. Both he and the player would write down a fair figure, the agreement being that if the player's was the lowest, they would split the difference. Ball players have their own ways to get across the idea that the money offered isn't enough. Chuck Connors once sent back his contract with a note written to Bavasi in red ink. It read, "You want my blood. Please send contract with more money. As you can see, I, am running, out of, blah, Rocky Nelson, the much-traveled major leaguer and a big hero in Montreal, had just led the International League in 6 departments. When his contract came, it was for the same amount as the previous year. He noted that the envelope was addressed to Robert Nelson. His given name is Glenn. He circled the name and sent the contract back unsigned. Another came, same mistake, same procedure by Rocky. The third came, same amount, same name, and a sharp note wanting to know why, in all courtesy, he hadn't even sent a note with the rejected contracts. "The money," wrote Rocky, "isn't flattering, but the wrong name on the envelope is a real insult." While general manager at Cleveland, Hank Greenberg got an answer in the mail that really stunned him. After receiving an unsigned contract, Greenberg immediately sent a wire to the player. "In your haste to accept the terms, you forgot to sign the contract." The player came back with this note, "In your haste to give me a raise, you put in the wrong figure." If they are all like me, very few ball players have ever read a contract in its entirety. There are 2 lines the ball players look at: where do I play and how much do I get? For as long as I can remember, the Cardinals have had Miss Murphy in charge of preparing contracts. It was always Miss Murphy who would type in the figure agreed upon, and she'd be the second person to wish you a good season. Once a contract is signed, there is no comparing salaries with other players. This is an unwritten law respected by all. Dissension could easily start with the feeling that he's getting more than me when I'm doing more than him. The only advice I got upon being subpoenaed before a congressional committee was to tell the truth. When asked to state how much I made, I told the truth. Upon returning to Chicago, I was told I had made a big mistake because 2 players had already been in demanding more money on the strength of what I was being paid. The worst feature of contract negotiation is that in the discussion, all the negative aspects of the player's ability are brought out. You sometimes get the feeling that you're lucky to even be offered a contract, and then when you sign it, the general manager tells the press that your club has a chance to win the pennant because you are such a key man. The player that is trying to sign and the one signed become 2 different guys. Trades and contracts are the showcase of the general manager. It is in these 2 phases of the game that his name is most often mentioned. See 2 general managers sitting together and the trade winds start to blow. The trades you don't make are the best ones, the general managers will tell you. Values fluctuate from week to week, year to year. The throw-in of a year ago can't be had at any price today. Statistics are kept on all players. Scouting reports are constantly coming in. Frank Lane and Bing Devine are among the general managers that subscribe to out-of-town papers to help keep a finger on the pulse of other teams. Frequent telephone calls add to the information stockpile. The calls range from calling minor league managers to asking neighbors of ball players about personal habits. Every factor is weighed, but the risk rate is high. No deal is made with the idea of stealing a player. Deals are made to fill particular needs. Because of circumstances and situations the fans can't see, a deal will sometimes look lopsided. The bad ones are remembered longer than the good ones. A deal can start with a vague hint, or it can start with a telephone call making an outright offer. Frank Lane engineered a deal while in a hotel room for 3 days, talking transoceanic to Hank Greenberg in Rome. Pat Harmon, sports editor of the Cincinnati Post, once wrote how general manager Gabe Paul of the Cincinnati Reds goaded Frank Lane, then general manager of the Cardinals, into a deal. Both Lane and Paul were to be among the speakers at a dinner in Dayton. Up to that time, Paul had made 89 phone calls in 89 days without concluding a trade. That night he said to his audience, "We have here a man who has fallen in love with his own players. Frank Lane is so much in love with his players that he refuses to part with them, even though he has had many chances." As Paul spoke, a phonograph record in the wings softly played "Falling in Love with Love." Lane jumped up to speak. As he passed Paul, he said, "Before I go back to St. Louis tonight, we'll have a deal." It was Brooks Lawrence for Jackie Collum. But Lane had been eyeing Collum, and it took more than music and a dare to make the deal. Front office interference is a phrase that upsets more fans than any other phrase in baseball. The general manager ought to leave the field manager alone, say the baseball fans. But it is not and cannot be that way. The manager and general manager may not always be in agreement, but they must be working it out together. The manager is usually handpicked by the general manager for qualities that the general manager thinks will get the best out of the material he gives his man to work with. They must be together. Game strategy is up to the manager, but there are times when he cannot see the forest for the trees. Frank Lane's pet example involves the Cardinals of 1956 and an outfielder. "Do you figure on using so-and-so next year?" he asked Fred Hutchinson. "No, get rid of him." "How can I if you don't play him? You got him on the bench playing Sauer, 40 years old, in his place. If the other club feels you think Sauer is better than so-and-so, how can I trade him?" Hutch saw the point, played so-and-so the last month, and the following winter Lane traded him. There's the case for front office interference. A general manager in baseball today has a very definite voice in the selection of coaches by his manager. It used to be a buddy-buddy system. Players used to make agreements among themselves that whoever got to the big leagues first as manager would name the other a coach. Now the hiring of a coach is done with a specific duty in mind and often after much deliberation. Coaches can be placed in the categories of assistant manager, middleman, and journeyman. The assistant manager coach is one who has complete charge of a particular phase of the team action, usually pitching. For many years, Jim Turner had control of the New York Yankee pitching staff, and it was mainly on his recommendation that Casey Stengel made his moves. The middleman is usually closest to the manager and will be at his side most of the time off the field. He knows baseball, but his greatest asset is that he knows how to make friends and influence people. He is the buffer between the manager and players. The journeyman is the coach who does a good job, but for one reason or another rarely keeps a job very long. This man is usually a bullpen catcher who catches batting practice, throws for extra hitting, and warms up the pitchers. He serves as part-time scout when the club is holding tryout camps in the park, a general hard-working handyman. There are coaches who are particular specialists, a Bill Dickey whose job was to help Yogi Berra, a Rogers Hornsby who taught hitting. A coach today must have qualifications to do a specific job. The actual work during a game is minor in comparison to his duties in the overall picture. The first base coach's real value may lie in being able to teach outfield play. The third base coach is usually the manager's liaison man. Many a former major league manager can be found in the coaching ranks. The fear of hiring a potential successor has decreased with proper understanding between front office and the field as to the job to be done. And we have topped the 20-minute mark, so I'm going to stop there. We're still in the middle of Chapter 9, the Social Security numbers, and we will continue with Chapter 9 of Baseball is a Funny Game by Joe Garagiola in the next session. Thank you for watching.